Facebook at Pan-African Television, as well as YouTube at Pan-African Television. Let me say a very good evening to all persons watching us on about 48 African countries. My name is Justice Appiah. You can join in the conversation by sending in your views, comments, and contributions on our WhatsApp text line displayed on the screen. We'll make a time and read all those out for you. Those of you watching us on Facebook can share the Facebook Live for other people to also watch tonight's edition of the program. Tonight on Hot News, we are looking at few issues. You know that, as at March, the inflation rate of this country, is recorded at 19.4%. 19.4%, very historic. You know that price of goods and services are very high on the market and all of that. We'll be looking at that. We'll also be looking at the Supreme Court's decision to place an injunction on the Asin North Member of Parliament, Honorable James Jachi-Kwesen, to stop holding himself as a Member of Parliament and stop performing parliamentary duties until the substantive case is heard by the Supreme Court. You know that he also has issues of, he's been accused of not renouncing his Canadian citizenship, and that he's holding, dual citizenship and all of that. For that reason, a citizen and, of course, a native of his constituency took the issue to court, where the Cape Coast High Court ruled on the matter and then ordered for a fresh election. But he petitioned the Supreme Court. So there has been a legal tussle from that time till now. He had, gotten to a point where he had to be injuncted. I mean, injunction has to be placed on him in order for the substantive matter to be heard. And so that was yesterday or so. I mean, the ruling came out, and the Supreme Court has, placed an injunction on him not to carry himself as a Member of Parliament and stop performing parliamentary duties until the substantive matter is heard. So I'll come back to that issue. But on the issue of if here, it says Ghana's consumer price inflation accelerated to 4% in March from 15.7% the previous month, far outside the government's targeted band of 8% plus or minus 2%, the West African Nations Statistics Service said on Wednesday. Now, it continued by saying that, it goes on and on and on and on, but I'll bring you the other details and all of that. I've been joined in the studio by Usman Ayariga, who is a member of the National Democratic Congress communications team. We're also expecting Saka Salia, who is a member of the New Patriotic Party communications team, to join us on the platform. As and when he joins us, he'll be part of the discussion. Usman, how are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, my brother.
Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Except for the fact that the economy is in tatters, so everyone is just trying to keep his head above water and to see what God can do for us all until we're able to change this incompetence of a government.
If you say the economy is in tatters, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, you just started by telling us the inflation rate, the current inflation rate figures coming from the Ghana Statistical Service.
Yeah.
I mean, it is no secret the current hardship everyone is going through as a country. In fact, we haven't gone through such hardship in the last 3 decades as a country. And most of the figures we are seeing out here are figures we haven't seen in the last 10 years as far as the economy is concerned. As it stands now, whether you like it or not, due to the depreciation of the cedi, our public debt has risen to close to 400 billion Ghana cedis, and that is at a percentage of 85% debt to GDP ratio. So if as a country your debt to GDP ratio is about 85%, then of course it doesn't mean that the country is in the right direction. If you also look at your budget deficit, which we are looking at close to 15%, is the worst in the history of this country in the last 20 years so far as the economic management is concerned. I mean, if we also look at prices of goods and services, how they have ballooned or parachute in the last 3 months, it is one that, I mean, everybody can attest to it. Unless, of course, anybody who is not in this country doesn't really feel the hardship or the pain in which everyone is going through, and is seeking to experience the high level of incompetence and hopelessness that we are experiencing under this Bawumia-led economy. And we expected, or everyone, at least every Ghanaian who listened to their campaign promises, their jamboree, the music and the songs and the promises, and how Bawumia went about his lecture, everyone expected that this was a group of people who were coming to exhibit high level of competence. And I'll just tell you that, I mean, the way and manner in which they are managing this economy is horrendous, is atrocious, is terrible, and is the height of incompetence that we haven't seen before. I mean, if we even look at price of fuel today, price of fuel, we are buying fuel at a price that has never been bought in the history of this country.
Government has attributed, I mean, some of these things to, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic as well as the Ukraine-Russia war and all of that. What they have said has to do with the fact that prior to 2019, if you look at 2017, 2018, the economic indicators were pointing to positive. In fact, they took economic growth of, I think, 3 to 4% to about 7 to 8% and all of that, even before COVID, you know, struck. So you can say, or one can safely say that COVID-19 and other factors, you know, are what, you know, have gotten us to where we are today. Don't you agree with government on some of those excuses?
I personally feel disgusted when I hear the government communicators bring up the issue of COVID.
Right.
And I know every other Ghanaian also feel insulted if the current managers of the economy want us to believe that as a result of COVID, we have moved from a well-doing economy to an economy that is in tatters. You understand? Then what it just means is that the economy already had its underlying health conditions.
I see.
Of course, that is what it means. Just like COVID came to strike, people with very good immune systems were able to withstand it. People with some underlying conditions found a way to meet the America. So then it means that even though the Ghanaian or the MPP were painting a picture as though the economy was in its best position, meaning that the economy in itself had serious underlying health conditions coming from the MPP. And they make it seem as though COVID is the worst thing that ever happened to the economy. And as a result of that, the economy has moved from a very flourishing economy to a very terrible economy. First and foremost, COVID didn't hit only Ghana. And don't forget that even in the midst of COVID, there was some aid that came. We had the first 1 billion from IMF, the second 1 billion again from World Bank. There was 240, there was 240 million, there was $240 million. There was another 10 billion Ghana cedis coming from BOG.
You question as well as COVID, but if you say that COVID didn't hit just Ghana, all economies are suffering. Most of the economies have not recovered from the ravages of COVID-19. So, I mean, Ghana is of no exception. Ghana is as well suffering the ravages of COVID-19.
Currently the worst economy, the worst currency in the world after the Russian currency. COVID hit every country. Why isn't the Nigerian naira the worst performing currency in the world, but Ghana? Why isn't the Burkina Faso CFA the worst performing currency, but the Ghana cedi? I mean, let's check sub-Saharan African countries. Why isn't their economy, why isn't their currency being the worst performing currency, but only Ghana? So let's not let it look like the only thing or only place COVID hit was Ghana. Then it simply means that our fundamentals were so weak that with the hit of COVID, then it exposed how weak we were. Then it means that we were just, I mean, we're just being painted with some cheap mascara, and with a little drizzling, then the whole thing washes off. That is what we were going
COVID,
through.
workers were not going to work for some significant number of months or probably weeks, yet they were paid. In COVID, government decided to give reliefs to the good people of Ghana. In COVID, government gave free electricity and free water. All these things are expenses borne by government that were taken by government. I mean, government had spent a lot in terms of COVID. So how do you expect government to pay back?
Well, point of correction, in COVID, I think we just had a 2 or 3 weeks where there was a lockdown and people were not working. For that matter, still government paid them. But it will also interest you to know that even in the midst of the COVID, where we make so much noise that about 40,000 people lost their jobs. If you also go back and even do the analysis based on the number of people that lost their jobs as a result of even the banking cleanup by Ken Ofori-Atta, there are other figures that tell us that we had about 40,000 people also losing their jobs, both direct and indirect jobs.
Right.
So then it tells you that even when COVID struck, what the finance minister did also struck as well as what COVID did to us. So what it just tells us is that we were already sitting on a time bomb, and we had already put together very bad policies, bad spending, bad expenditure, bad management of the economy, and COVID just exposed us. So we cannot just sit back and tell ourselves that, so because of COVID, we found ourselves in the worst ever economy, and for that matter, we cannot complain. I find it very pathetic that the messiahs of the economy, or the economic messiahs today, are all running to COVID just to find some solace in COVID. I expected being serious economic messiahs. That is why in every planning you do, you also plan for the heydays, you plan for the bad days. You plan for the good days, and you plan for the bad days. That's why every country has its reserves and knows how to shore them up. That is why even when countries go through some level of coup d'etat, some, the stabilization of the economy, they find a way to bounce back. And don't forget that even in the midst of COVID, we had close to $2 billion to spend free of charge. Even that was mismanaged. Even that was mismanaged. There was the first $1 billion. There was the second $1 billion. There was the 240 million. Even though all these figures were under-declared by the NPP, and there was a 10 billion Ghana cedis coming from BOG. Where did all these monies go to? So if you had all this free money as a result of COVID, and you still come back and tell us that COVID is the reason why we are where we are, then I don't see anything short
there
of
again, in COVID, PPEs were distributed for free. In COVID,
okay, in COVID, they held meetings with 30 million Ghana cedis.
In COVID, foods were distributed to the underprivileged for free, cooked and uncooked and all of that. I mean, if you are asking of the whereabouts of these monies government received, you can see clearly that government used such monies, or government spent such monies on the good people of Ghana during COVID.
Yeah, I agree with you. The same way during COVID, out of the expenditure that came out, they spent close to 30 million Ghana cedis, 30 million Ghana cedis on just holding conferences and drinking tea.
I see.
So if people are spending close to 30 million Ghana cedis on conferences to drink tea to speak about COVID, then you know the level of the mismanagement of the economy. So I mean, this is not something we can run away from. Now we come back even to the issue of inflation. I mean, basic economics will tell you that there are certain factors that control or determine how inflation moves in a country. Inflation in itself, let's not get it wrong, it's not a bad thing. Especially economists will tell you that if it's ranging between 1% to 2%, then it means that there's economic growth, because every economy must grow. And once an economy grows, then the inflation will go up. So worldwide, the well-accepted rate is 1% to 2% inflation rate. So within a year, that's an annual inflation rate. So within a year, if you have an average of 1% to 2%, and you see that the economy has grown at a certain percent, then it means that it is good for the economy. But if you have an economy which is not growing, and at the same time the inflation rate is double digit and it's even the highest, close to 19%, they know that there is a problem. There are certain factors that, I mean, aside from the push-pull and the cost effect of the determination of inflation, you also look at exchange rates, also determines your inflation rate. Your debt management also determines your inflation, and of course government policy also determines your inflation rate. And you realize that in the past 3 months, the main indicators that actually led to this highest level of inflation rate has to do with our exchange rate and our public debt.
I see.
Understand? As it stands now, our Ghana cedi was the worst performing currency in the world. I mean, if you put aside the Russian currency, which as a result of the war is performing so badly, then it means that the next worst performing currency in the world is the Ghana cedi. So then it means, what it meant was that our public debt, which used to be about 300 and something billion, has moved to 400 billion without even borrowing any new transaction, without any new transactions, just sitting back, and the depreciation of your cedi has increased your public debt. The depreciation of your cedi has also increased the percentage of your debt to GDP ratio. You understand? So then what it means is that your currency has depreciated and you need more money to purchase more imports, then of course inflation goes up.
Right.
Now you have fuel prices going up as a result of all these factors, the depreciation of your currency and what have you. So, and I mean, the depreciation of the currency.
No, but you cannot attribute.
The depreciation of your currency has nothing
but you
to do
can
with
also not.
the mismanagement of
you
the
can
economy.
also not attribute price of fuel going up to just depreciation of the CD.
The price of
government is telling you that
three things determine price of fuel.
Government is also telling you that, look, the Russia-Ukraine war is one thing that has also affected the hike in fuel prices and all of that. And that makes a lot of sense. Does that not make sense?
Well, in a very long time, international crude prices haven't gone up. I mean, close to 2 months, crude prices haven't gone up. I can't be correct, but crude prices haven't gone up.
Right.
So the things that determine price of fuel in Ghana, you and I know, is the taxes, the forex, and the international crude price. Any one that triggers affects the end user, the price at the pump. If you quite remember, we said the rate at which the cedi is depreciating would lead to an increase in fuel price. So in the last 3 months, for the fuel to have moved from 6 Ghana cedis per litre to 10 Ghana cedis per litre is nothing short of the incompetence of the Alhaji Bawumia Ken Ofori-Atta administration.
But have you not also
because it was all determined by the depreciation of the cedi.
Have you not also aware your mind?
Increased new taxes.
No, but you have
introduced new taxes to the fuel.
No. Let's get this right.
Yeah.
Let's straighten this.
Yes.
Have you also aware your minds to the fact that what is happening between Russia and Ukraine is also affecting the crude prices on the international market, and in the long run, Ghana will also be affected. In fact, it's not just Ghana. Nigeria, go to Nigeria, they even have the money, they are not getting the product to buy. Go to US, go to UK, they are all suffering the brunt of what is happening in Russia and Ukraine. So if this government is saying that yes, the issue between Russia and Ukraine is one of the things that is also contributing to the hike in fuel prices, why would you want to brush that away and then talk about some other things?
The best place the NPP has sought to seek solace is either COVID or the Russian-Ukrainian war.
But is that true or false?
These two places have been the bosom place for Bawumia to go and hide himself.
I see.
That is the best place he has decided to seek solace in, to hide either under COVID or under the Russian-Ukrainian war. Don't forget that prices of fuel even got to 9 cedis before Russian-Ukraine spark up. Yes, we started buying fuel close to 9 cedis even before. When did the Russian-Ukrainian war start? I think it's like a month ago or 2 months ago. By then, we're already buying fuel close to 9 Ghana cedis.
Which filling stations were you buying?
Every filling station. Of course, we all know how artificially they decide to hold oil for a while, but I mean that doesn't hold. Maximum 2, 3, 4 days. Oil itself also increases the fuel price. They try to hold oil to reduce the price just to control the market's, pricing, but it doesn't work for a while. If you artificially hold it, it will expose you, and if you're not careful, at the end of the day, oil as a company will be on its knees. So I mean, we cannot continue to seek solace in the Russian-Ukrainian war. I mean, we all know, we all hope and pray that this war will not continue for a while, and we will wait to see where the NPP will decide to seek solace in after the Russian-Ukrainian war.
We are still talking about inflation. You know that Russia and Ukraine, produce more than 30% of the entire world's, wheat and all those cereals and all that. The issue has as well contributed, and not just that. We import a lot of other products, fertilizers and all of that from those two places and all those things. So would it not be sad on the part of anybody who would want to brush that away by saying that this government is only trying to hide behind what is happening in Russia and Ukraine to defend, the situation in Ghana, when in actual fact, you cannot rule that situation out of our predicament as it stands now?
I mean, even before the Russian-Ukrainian war, I mean, the minority as a group kept, singing to the government that if you are not careful, you would get to where you don't want to get to. If we are not careful, we will get to where we as a country don't want to get to. We will get to where we are. So even before the Russian-Ukrainian war, we kept singing the song to them that if you don't stop the borrowing, we'll get to the extent where we cannot borrow and our economy will be in serious trouble.
You borrowed when you were in government. I mean, why would you want to prevent this government from borrowing?
I mean, yes, we borrowed, but we borrowed to do capital expenditure. Now, that is why we have a problem with this government. No one is saying borrowing is a bad thing, but it only depends on what you borrow to do. If you borrow just to spend, I mean, on frivolities that do not add value to the economy, then there's a problem. Because if you borrow and you expand the economy, then of course your debt to GDP ratio would surely reduce. Because if you borrow and you spend on the economy, then it increases the GDP. Then even though you borrow more, it increases the GDP, and as a result of that, we won't get to the 85% of debt to GDP ratio. And if you're not careful, by the close of this year, we'll be headed to 90% of debt to GDP ratio. And that is serious. That means that the economy is almost shutting down, because then it means that we'll be unable to meet our debt. We'll be unable to pay our debt. We'll be unable to service all our loans. Then what it means is that even as it stands now, we are being rated as the worst economy so far as the ratings is concerned. That alone is what is also affecting the economy. So these are things we spoke about. Honorable Atuforsen spoke about it. Honorable Jenapo spoke about it. I mean, everyone, Honorable Adongo spoke about it. We kept warning Ken Oforiatta that your love and taste for borrowing should cease at a point in time. Governance is not all about waking up and collateralizing everything and spending on things that do not add value to your economy. Then what it means is that you will spend more, but at the end of the day, you cannot see anything for the spending you are doing. You understand? I mean, for us, we spent, yes, but we could pinpoint to you things that have added value to the GDP or have increased the GDP. Of course, there was Kotoka Terminal 3, there was the expansion of the harbour, there were factories we built, Commander Sugar Factory, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, if we borrowed X amount and we even invested Y amount back into the economy and we didn't spend it on unnecessary spending, then what it means that it expands the economy and it's good. It means that the facilities in which we invested in themselves can also aid in servicing some.
What do you refer to as unnecessary spendings?
Well, if at the end of the year the president's travels alone is close to 10 million Ghana cedis on fuel alone, is that a necessary spending? I don't see that as a necessary spending. If at the end of the year the president travels on presidential jets, it's 18,000 euros per hour, and by the time the president goes to London, that is like a whole dormitory he could have built in Boko Central. I don't see that.
What if those travels were? What if those travels were fruitful? What if those travels yielded something fruitful for this nation?
That is the same way the president the last time traveled for the climate conference to go and speak at the conference, and he went with 200 people. How much did that bring to the economy? I don't know. Maybe you can help me, or if there's any, if the NPV person were here, he could have helped us. I mean, these are travels that do not add anything to the economy. You get up, you are going for a conference, and you go with 200 people. The state is footing all the bills. You as a president, you go in a what do you call it? A private rented jet, paying huge amounts of money, and you tell us that these spendings are not frivolous? No. I think the president, we all understand that he's almost done with his second term, and he has been able to achieve his lifelong dream of becoming president of the country. But we plead with him not to empty the coffers of the country, because, I mean, younger generations are yet to be born, and younger generations would have to repair the damage he and his cousin Oforiatta with the help of
the argument is that the argument is that the NDC is only good at finding fault, punching holes, and pinpointing things they think government is not doing right without preferring any solution. In all these, what solutions have you preferred to government?
In every lecture or economic lecture we have organized, we've preferred solutions. I mean, we telling the government not to borrow. You don't think that is preferring solution?
If the government doesn't borrow, how do you expect the government to run?
We're telling the government not to engage in profligate spending. You think it's not a proposal? It is. Me telling you not to engage in spending on unnecessary things in itself alone, it's a proposal.
For instance, if you say government should not borrow, how do you expect government to generate revenue to run this country?
We have told government, do not borrow. However, cut on the spending and let us see how we can manage the little resources we have. Because the rate at which we are borrowing and the rate at which our revenues are being raised, it is not in tandem. And at the end of the day, we are going to find ourselves in a dire situation where we will have no option than to actually have the economy crumbling on us. These are solutions we prefer to them. Every time we prefer solutions to them, I mean, they send their watchdogs to come out and speak on the economy when they actually know very little as to what is happening. But you cannot blame them because, I mean, in power, they are being insulated from the realities and the hardships on the ground. They do not experience the hardship ordinary citizens go through. One who has to travel from Bolga to Accra, the hardship you go through to raise even that lorry fare to bring you from one point of the country to another point of the country. People going to school have to pay school fees. People going to have to pay transportation. People go to hospital have to pay medical bills. People who even receive salary don't know how their salaries are going to take them through 30 days of the month. People are actually living by magic in this country. If they don't know, we should tell them. So if the opposition comes out to prefer solutions, instead of being humble and listening to what the opposition is saying, they rather try to engage in an unnecessary discourse and argument as to who is saying what and who is not saying what. Instead of listening to the message, they try to insult the messengers of the reasonable message we are sending to them. So it is not as if the NDC has never preferred any solution. Go through all our lecture series and you realize that every time we speak, we tell them that if you don't do A, this is what is going to happen. If you don't do B, this is what is going to happen. And if you reject this proposal we are giving you, this is the next thing that is going to happen. And everything is falling in place. So they let it actually look like we are the prophets telling them what will happen to the economy. So, I mean, we told them that, I mean, it will be very difficult for the NPP to even survive this year, so far as the economic management is concerned, without imposition of a new tax, considering how they were spending. Then, of course, they brought in the e-levy. And we told them that without e-levy, the economy was going to go down. And they thought we were just doing propaganda. By March, April, we all saw what happened in this country, how everything was going haywire. You understand? So, I mean, it's not as if we do not prefer solutions. We prefer solutions. We give them proposals. We actually advise them. Because, I mean, if the country goes down, we are all in it. And this is the only country some of us have, even though some of them have, I mean, other passports and dual citizenship. I mean, most of them are actually UK citizens. For some of us, we only belong to Ghana, so we are only Ghanaian citizens. So if the country goes down, we go down with it. So, I mean, that is why some of us are very passionate as to why some of the things are happening in this country.
Viewers, you are still watching Hot News Radio on Pan-African Television with me, Justice Appiah. We are coming to you from our studios in Abilinkwe 48, Swanika Street in Accra. You can keep your messages coming in on our WhatsApp through text line. I'll make a time and read all those out for you. You can as well leave your suggestions, questions, and whatnot on our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at Pan-African Television. If you're watching us on Facebook, please like our page and also share for other people to also watch tonight's edition of the program. Now let's stay a bit on inflation and, you know, the impact it's likely to have on the country. But then, I mean, this is not obviously the first time we are recording such a high digit, you know, inflation and all of that. It didn't get to 19%, but the NDC in government, we recorded somewhere around 15.5, 15.6%. I mean, why is this, you know, your time without even COVID-19 and some of these world crises, you recorded up to 15.6, 15.7%. How much more a government that is confronted with a lot of challenges, including pandemics?
Well, I mean, it's very simple. We have not tried to engage in the politics of comparison. That I did this and did that. We are dealing with the realities of the current situation. And the realities of the current situation is that Ghanaians have found themselves in a dire situation of suffering and serious hardship.
You see, we can only strike the comparisons when you are coming with, we can only stop the comparisons when you are coming with clean hands. But you cannot manage the economy just like they are doing and then come and sit here and paint a picture as though you are saints and they are mismanaging the economy. When you are not considering or putting into consideration, the pandemics and all those NDC challenges they've been confronted with.
It is instructive to know that NDC as a government has never in the history of this country recorded an inflation of 19%. Simple.
But the exigencies at this time may be different from that of the National Democratic Congress's era. You were not faced with any pandemic, were you?
Well, when did we experience our highest inflation?
No, I asked you. At the time you even had inflation at 15-point-something%. Did we have anything like
inflation
any pandemic
at
also?
.something%, I remember, was somewhere in 2009.
Exactly, but
yes, I'm coming. Was in 2009 when we are just taking power from MPP in 2008. You understand?
But that was the NDC era.
Yes. So I'm building a point. And inflation usually is not caused due to the things you do that year. It's usually as a result of the effect of the spending and mismanagement of the previous year that actually reflects in the year you sit on it. You understand? Okay. So if in 2009 we experienced our highest point of inflation, which was around 15%, then it tells you that it was a result of the spending and mismanagement of the economy in 2008, which was under President Kufuor's time. And you quite remember how...
What was the rate of inflation in 2015?
In 2015... Well, 2015, we never experienced 19%.
It was still somewhere 15.4%.
We were in power, we never experienced 19%.
It was still within 15%.
But we've never experienced 19%. We are talking about 19% today, which is the highest ever in the history of this country.
That was as a result...
Which is the highest ever in the history of this.
That has been so as a result of COVID-19, a world pandemic, Russia and Ukraine, another conflict that has affected the world.
That is, I seriously have a difficulty when the NPP tries to run to COVID. Don't forget that. I keep telling you, don't forget that even in the midst of COVID, this country was giving so much grant to cushion us. So if you mismanage your economy and you mismanage the grants that were given to you due to the COVID pandemic, never in this country did we receive $1 billion free, another $1 billion free, $250 million free of charge. That's $2.2 billion free of charge. Never did the NDC ever experience $2.2 billion free of charge from the World Bank or the IMF. You understand? So if you were hit by COVID and you're given all this to cushion you, and you come out of COVID, 2 years post-COVID, you are still blaming COVID. And when shall we, the NPP should be candid enough to tell us when they will stop blaming it on COVID, then we will know how to engage them. Otherwise, in the next 5 years, we'll continue to blame it on COVID. Then we bring back the Russian-Ukrainian war. At what point will they stop blaming COVID? Then we can re-engage them. That is the only question I really want to ask the NPP and Bawumia, that at what point in this our economic journey are they going to stop blaming our economic hardship on COVID? At what point? As for the Russian-Ukrainian war, at a point it would stop. So I know at a point they will continue blaming it too. So I just want to know at what point, because now it looks like COVID restrictions have been eased and all of that, even including all the chopping that was done at the airport with the frontiers and what have you has all been reduced to some extent. Now the restrictions and everything has been reduced. So why then should we continue to blame COVID? They should tell us at what point will they stop blaming our economic woes?
Don't you think that it is fair to assess this government on a fair ground? On a fair ground that they were not faced with any pandemic. There hasn't been any challenge in terms of any world challenge that would go along with to affect our economy as well. Then when you're talking about the figures, you know that, look, you had every opportunity to manage the country and it wasn't well managed. Are you being fair to this government?
I just told you that the finance minister as a person has done more damage to this economy than even COVID.
How did he do so?
I told you. If you look at how much he borrowed alone, that was enough damage to the economy. If you look at how much he even used to clean up the banks, 20 billion Ghana cedis, that was enough damage to the economy. If you look at the number of unemployment he caused as a result of this financial cleanup, that was enough damage to the economy than COVID ever did to us. So if we come back and we cannot blame ourselves based on our actions and inactions, and we just want to lump everything on COVID, then trust me, and then I'll just say that we are being unfair to COVID. Honestly, we are being unfair to the pandemic. Yes, it came with its problems, but now we want to lump everything on COVID. And mind you, even before COVID, we kept singing and reminding and cautioning everybody, cautioning the finance minister that the trajectory in which you were going was going to land us where we wouldn't want to be. And you happen to land us there. And by your own calculation, maybe whether fortunately or unfortunately, COVID struck. So everybody found a convenient way to put the blame on COVID. But even before COVID, we kept telling the country that we are going to where we don't want to get to today, where we are. And that is why we are here today. So with or without COVID, we still would have gotten here. But you see, I keep making the analysis that even though COVID hits, COVID came with its own issues. We were also given enough money to cushion us so far as COVID was concerned. If we had even managed that $2.2 billion very well, trust me, we won't be where we are as a country. So even in the midst of COVID, we further mismanaged the monies that were given to us to help shore the economy, and we came to under-declare those monies. I mean, what level of dishonesty, what level of intellectual dishonesty is this coming from the MPP? You and I know. I mean, at a point they said only 100 million came. At a point they said, oh, all didn't come. At a point, the figures kept changing until the World Bank itself came to give out the right figures.
Right.
And everybody went mute. You understand? So even in the receiving of the funds to help shore your economy as far as COVID hit you was even mismanaged, and it was under-declared. How can this be an economy or a finance minister or a vice president who is willing to salvage the economy? Then it means that the level of dishonesty is appalling. So, I mean, we cannot continue to blame everything on COVID. We ourselves, the mismanagement of this economy is worse than what COVID has done to us. With or without COVID, if we had managed this economy well, COVID would have come and passed, and we would still be strong as a strong economy. But I mean, unfortunately for us, the economy already had underlying health conditions. So with a little strike of COVID, it just took the economy to the ICU, and that is where we are. So we are trying to see how we can resuscitate the economy with a little oxygen that, I mean, is being given in the ICU. So I mean, the MPP should stop, blaming everything on COVID as though COVID was the only thing that happened to this economy. Aside from COVID, the finance minister is the other thing that happened to the economy. And Bawumia himself is another thing that happened to the economy. I mean, if you arrange them, after COVID, the next worst thing that happened to this economy is the finance minister, followed by Alhaji Bawumia.
I see. Let me take a few of our messages. I'll come back for us to look at the other issue. But we are expecting Saka Salia, who is a member of the New Patriotic Party communications team, to be part of this discussion. As and when he joins us, he would take his seat. This one says, free water and electricity, which was paid back by the citizenry. Okay. Abbas Amongobo also says, the hardship in Ghana is unbearable and unbelievable. We can't, but anything Bawumia and Nana have destroyed Ghana. He says, now a bottle of Woodyside, which was sold for 10 Ghana cedis at Bahamas era, is now sold at 52 Ghana cedis. I don't know how true that is, unless I verify. Anyway, this one also says, my regards to Mr. Usman, but for the rebase, our inflationary figure would have been hitting 25 to 30%. Even this 19.4% is a doubtful figure. They have shared everything among themselves, and the economy is now on its knees. JM the Savior. Ade Rabiu also sent in this one. Popular, Tangnaba also says the NPP government should stop running to seek cover from COVID-19 and Russia plus Ukraine war. Nana Addo and Bawumia's government has mismanaged the country's economy. Thank you so much for your message. Keep your messages coming. I will read some few of them before I wrap up. I have some more over there as well. I'll try and then read some few later. But let me come to you, Usman, on the issue of the Asin North Member of Parliament. Supreme Court has placed an injunction on him until the substantive matter is determined by the Supreme Court on whether or not, a fresh election be held, just as the Cape Coast High Court, ruled earlier. Your position on this, and if I say your position on this, not you personally, but what's the National Democratic Congress's position on the ruling by the Supreme Court?
Well, the National Democratic's position is a position of disappointment because we feel that in as much as we expected the substantive matter to have come to a conclusion and a determination made as to his eligibility to be MP or to have been voted at the time, then there shouldn't have been an injunction to injunct him from actually performing his duties as an MP. Then, of course, it means that if the current substantive matter is going to travel through 2 years, the people of Asin North would be without an MP for the next 2 years, which we feel is actually a blow to the people who went out to queue and to vote for their
But lawyer for the plaintiff, Mr. Frank Davies, also said that it would be better for the people of Asin North not to have a member of parliament than to have an illegal member of parliament, somebody who carries himself to be a member of parliament when in actual fact he's not.
Well, you see, the question in law usually is what damage would it have caused to everyone if he still sat there and performed his duties as a member of parliament? Because this is someone who has already performed his duties as member of parliament for a year and a half and counting. So what then happens? What kind of redeemable redemption will be done to the MP if at the end of the day it is determined that he's actually qualified to be member of parliament? What will happen to him? What kind of remedies will now be available to him? So usually, in law, it's only when the damage that will be caused will be so grave that cannot be repaired, that is when they actually try to place an injunction. Example, when two people are fighting over a piece of land, whereas one is already building on it, then they have to place an injunction on the person building that you hold on, let us finish determining the matter. If the land is yours, you go build. If the land is for the other person, so then he can actually build. Otherwise, by the time we are done, if you are not careful and it belongs to another person, you would have already built a mansion on it, and to now tell you to pull it down would have been causing so much damage to you, the person, and damage to the person who already owns the land. So now the question is that what kind of damage would have been meted out to everyone if he were still sitting as an MP? So if you look at it, I personally, I have read the judgment. I disagree with the judgment. It's very normal for people to disagree, but that is what the Supreme Court holds. But if you also read the judgment and you also watch the presentation of Kandapa, then you realize that as a country, the judiciary ought to be very careful and know how to manage some of these things. When Kandapa said it shouldn't look as if every time the judiciary is tilted towards the government in power, so there needs to be a balance. And I don't know if the balance was why we got the 5-2 or not, but
you cannot say so because the judges have minds of their own.
Well, this is a national security minister speaking. I didn't speak for him. This was a national security minister actually speaking, trying to tell the judges that it shouldn't always be a one-way affair. Otherwise, people will lose confidence in the court. I didn't say it. It was on air. He said it. So I think if some of these things keep happening and people decide to lose confidence in the court, then it becomes very, very problematic. Then, of course, back to the Asin North issue. I mean, it's very, very disappointing. I mean, what has happened. If you look at the series of events and how everything started and where we have gotten to, then you realize that, I mean, this judgment is one that anybody actually following would disagree with it. But that is the position of the court.
What are your disagreements with the decision by the Supreme Court?
Well, my first disagreement is with the fact that the Supreme Court shouldn't upheld the injunction from the High Court in the sense that they should have still allowed the MP to hold office as MP whilst there is the substantive matter to be determined so far as the citizenship is concerned. So are they trying to tell us that one day if somebody decides to challenge the citizenship or the allegiance of someone who has already been elected as president, will the Supreme Court now tell the president to step aside while we determine it? No. I mean, it continues while the person continues to act in his capacity until there's a final determination. Then, of course, because from now till the time it is determined, then what it means is that he is still the MP until the court determines otherwise. So why do you already injunct the person, let it look like the person, it's as though you've already pronounced him guilty even before you start the case. You understand? So he is innocent until he's proven guilty. And he continuing to act as an MP doesn't render or doesn't cause any irreparable damage to anybody or to himself or the parliament so far as his working is concerned. But as it stands now, he has been elected, he has won, he is qualified, he's eligible to be member of parliament.
Qualified?
Yes, he is qualified.
Qualification is what is being challenged.
Yes, but as it stands now, until the court determines otherwise, as it stands now, he is qualified. So why can't the court allow him perform his duties as an MP until the court themselves determine whether or not he is qualified or not qualified? So why would you say that he should step aside for you to now go and determine whether he's qualified to be MP? Whereas the EC at the time felt that he was qualified, then somebody is now challenging him. So what they are trying to tell us is that moving forward, if tomorrow somebody brings, if 10 other people from 10 different constituencies decide to challenge the nationality of their various MPs, even bringing some evidence that we all know is not watertight, pending the final determination of the matter, so the court will ask all the MPs to step aside? Is that the precedence we want to set? I don't think so. I don't think so. You get me? Otherwise, in the next few years, what we have is that we have citizens from so many constituencies coming out challenging their MPs that I suspect he has dual citizenship. Then he can go and bring some documents that I think these are the documents to show he has dual citizenship. Whether they are original or authentic or fake, he will bring them. And it's now time for the court to determine the substantive issue. Then the court will now tell all those MPs to step aside. Is that the kind of precedence we want to set? I don't think that is the right precedent. We have had so many election-related cases, citizenship-related cases, run 4 years in this country before the final determination. We had the Williamson case that went about 4 years. We had I also had a similar electoral issue that traveled 4 years until there was a final determination. Because otherwise, if you are not careful, you would injunct the MP. Boko. Yes, as well as Boko Central. It traveled for 4 years before the court made a final determination that he was actually guilty. You understand? So from the time he was performing his duties, he was qualified. So until the day the court pronounces that he's not qualified, that is when he's taken out. But from that time to the time he performs his duty, and there's nothing wrong with what he does. You understand? So but for the politicking around it and the tussle for numbers in the legislature, I mean, one can just see, it's glaring, one can see the political underpins and undertones, I mean, hidden within some of these things. I mean, it's I mean, as a minority leader will say, they are trying to use the judiciary to tilt the balance of power. I'm quoting him whenever he says that. So, I mean, it's sad, it's a bad precedent, and I thought the apex court of the land would have placed a very good precedent for all of us to follow, but that is their call. But I mean, I disagree, but that is it, and that is the law now, so we read it as the law. So, but even though you disagree with it, sometimes you read the law but you disagree with it. So I mean, I think it's a sad day. I mean, for me as a person. Otherwise, I mean, we have the same vein. So as stands now, people of Central Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi do not have a representation in court, and people of Asin North will not have a representation in Parliament until there's a final determination. So the case is going to run for the next 4 years. So the people of Asin North would not have an MP sitting to represent them for the next 3 years or 2 years. I mean, is this what we want to have as a country?
Right. People are of the view that, well, the NDC, after the High Court ruling, should have allowed for fresh elections to be held, because if you listen to the constituents of Asin North, what they are saying is that without Honorable James Jachikwesin, they are not going to vote for any other person to lead their constituency in Parliament. Why would the NDC, or why is it that the NDC didn't allow or advise the Member of Parliament to accept a fresh elections to be held in Asin North? Those are some of the questions people are asking. People really want to know.
Well, I mean, the window of appeal is usually open to everyone, and I mean, I'm sure his lawyers would have advised him accordingly. So I wouldn't want to think for him as to why we didn't accept it and decide to go for a by-election. But trust me, we are not scared of a by-election as enough. Any day, any time, if we go for a by-election with the NPP, we will beat them flawless. So it's not as though we are scared of a by-election, but we just want to make sure that the right thing is done. So that, I mean, if we are not careful and we rush into a by-election, then of course the MPP can just decide to start handpicking so many MPs, just trying them, thinking that we will quickly rush to a by-election. So I'm sure we will fight it legally to its logical conclusion. And at the end of the day, whatever be the final outcome, we will take a decision on it as to what to do. If there's a by-election, of course, we will contest that by-election and we will win that by-election.
Right. Somebody says, excellent submission by Comrade Usman Ayariga, incoming National Democratic Congress youth organizer, the youth agenda. Well, somebody sent in that one. I don't know if he has already declared his intention of contesting the youth organizer position in the National Democratic Congress. This one also says, great job done by Comrade Osman Ayariga. We are watching you. Another one also says, well, the New Patriotic Party is in cahoot with it. I don't have any evidence to that, and I will use this platform to send that message. I'm sorry, I'm unable to read, that message out for you. I won't take any other messages anymore. Let me come to Usman for us to wrap up. Unfortunately, Saka didn't join us on the platform. We are hoping that next time he will be here with us to respond to some of the things said by Usman, and to also tell Ghanaians why we've gotten to where we are today as a country. Unfortunately, he didn't come. Now, Usman, take us home. I mean, your final words.
Well, all I can say, especially to the good people of Asin North, that they should be strong, steadfast, and they should stand behind their MP, Honorable Jachikwesin. He's a fine gentleman, fantastic gentleman. He loves his constituent, he loves his country. He is someone who could renounce his Canadian passport to come back and contest to help develop his community. So the people of Asin North should stay resolute, they should stay steadfast, they should stay loyal to their MP. And this is just one of those setbacks. And we are very optimistic that he will come out victorious. So my message this evening particularly is to the people of Asin North and to Honorable Jachikwesin that we are solidly behind you, both in prayers and in whatever way we can help. And the agenda to ousting shall not work.
Right, thank you so much, Usman, for coming. I'm so grateful for your time. This is your time will allow us on the program. You get time with us. Same time next week. My name is Justice Appiah, and the show has been HotNews. Goodbye.